My audio has been muted this whole time. Thank you, Matt, in the chat. Oh my goodness, this live stream, folks, we've really been doing it right, as usual. One of the things I was saying when you couldn't hear me was that, the Niedermeyer.online promise, a live streaming promise, is that something will go wrong and that things will generally be super janky. I'm over delivering on that. Even by the standards, the low standards of my online streaming brand. Wow, that was like 5 minutes of me just talking on mute. Okay, off to a magical start. So, resetting. My co-host Eric Rush, we had a little miscommunication. I will be filing a grievance with the union, but he should be here within 5, 10, 15 minutes. I don't know, some amount of time. At some point, he will pop up here. In the meantime, I was just, I know, so thank you to Matt Klippenstein, who's in the chat. I'm not actually looking at the chat right now. I need to figure out how to do that. There it is. There we go. Oh, see, now I'm looking at the chat. Okay. Imagine this. This is how good I am at streaming. So me and Eric, ESG Hound, chatting and ranting about Tesla, really, one of the things I was saying is it started at a website you may remember called Twitter. And at a certain point, Twitter created something called Twitter Spaces, and it was this live audio chat. And it kind of intersected, for me at least, with a moment where I was really starting to give up on the idea that like journalism was going to ever have a meaningful impact on Elon Musk and his trajectory. And so, which is kind of where I've been for a while. And the subject. So this weekend is my 10-year anniversary. I posted about this earlier on Blue Sky. My 10-year anniversary of being a Tesla hater. 10 years ago today, I would have been just packing and maybe even starting the drive down to California to check out the battery swap station that kind of sucked me in to this whole crazy thing. You can read all about that in Ludicrous, the Unrunner Story of Tesla Motors. But by the time Twitter Spaces came out, the book had been out for a couple of years, and there had been sort of this moment where Tesla's business was once again doing really bad, and then sort of COVID had come along and really rescued it through this unique sort of undersupply in the auto industry for the first time since World War II. Something that was kind of hard to predict was going to happen, and just completely turbocharge their business. And I think it was sort of starting to feel like this wasn't like what we all knew had to happen at some point. It was starting to feel like it wasn't going to happen. I'm just speaking for myself here, like around the time that Twitter Spaces came out. And so Eric, the ESG Hound, I think he was anonymous he's had a couple accounts when we first started chatting, and we'd been collaborating before. So we collaborated way back on some stories about Tesla's lack of environmental compliance. So we knew each other, but about this time, we kind of just both wanted to just rant. And so we started doing Twitter Spaces to do that. I know there's some folks who are watching now who remember those Twitter Spaces. They were a lot of fun. And then, yesterday, Elon sort of was a full court press media blitz, right? And I mean, he did 2 interviews, which he does not do a lot of interviews. And frankly, the one he did with Bloomberg, and I'm sure Eric and I will chat about it when he gets here, the one he did with Bloomberg really showed that he's lost his touch, right? He's been doing too many Fox News hits where, like even those Fox News hits, he doesn't do so well at. Doing the Bloomberg interview that he did, it was a competent interview, a very competent interview, and it absolutely, it got under his skin. Like, he has not subjected himself to that. It's actually funny. At one point, I'd actually kind of gone back and looked at like what was the last time that like Elon did a very like a serious interview that you could say was even remotely like critical or confrontational or like adversarial, I guess would be the term. And like, he almost never does it. It was a kind of a big moment for me where I just sort of took it for granted that at some point he'd sort of done some of them. And like, no, he only does safe interviews. This was a while ago that I sort of realized this, of course. And I think Bloomberg rope-a-doped him a little bit, and I tweeted about this a little bit. But Bloomberg had tweeted, I posted on Blue Sky, Bloomberg has a lot of sort of what I consider Musk dirt on his hands, right? Like, there was very clearly, and like, yeah, there's some stories I could tell having been a contributor there. You know, Musk had a lot of power in that organization for quite a while, and I don't know how or or why, other than right, like he hired someone in D.C. who went to Mike Bloomberg's parties, right, and so that woman had a lot of power to pull a lot of stuff that I think normally media organizations wouldn't put up with, right? And then there's this guy Tom Randall, who I just found out, who was like basically Elon Musk's like full-time PR guy at Bloomberg. Like, it was crazy. Like, all he did was really questionable pro Elon work. It was frankly like one of the more shocking examples at Bloomberg of what was kind of more sort of just tepid and like letting him get away with it through lack of confrontation rather than sort of actively supporting. But there were these sort of pockets that now Bloomberg has done good journalism on Musk and Tesla as well. I want to be super clear about that. Through the years, a number of reporters have done real good reporting on real serious stories, but institutionally, Bloomberg has had a very ambivalent relationship with Musk. This new the woman who did the interview yesterday that really got under Musk's skin. Her name's Michelle Hussein, and she comes from BBC. Apparently, she came in. Okay, I just hear Eric's almost here. Almost done with the monologuing. Anyway, she did an incredible job, and to me, I think this is like one of these things. Like, there's been a lot of, after 10 years of following this craziness, there's a lot of signs that things are changing. And for me, that interview at Bloomberg was one of them. Like, that was the most adversarial interview. It wasn't even that adversarial. Like, she did not sit down there saying like, I'm gonna really go after him. Like, I was very fair and very reasonable, and like not like even a super outlier necessarily for like, again, like, she wasn't trying to make it adversarial, confrontational, but it became that, and she didn't flinch and she didn't back down, and like the result was that was hands down the best Bloomberg interview I've ever seen with Elon Musk, and one of the better ones. There's one the Financial Times did a really good interview a number of years back now. That was I think sort of hands down the most adversarial interview I've seen him do. There was that goofy Don Lemon one, which I don't really count because I don't know. That was more weird than necessarily adversarial, although it was adversarial in a way, just not in like a particularly journalistic way. So, anyhow, this what Eric and I are here to discuss really is just this huge media blitz. And like, I did that Bloomberg story I sort of live posted on Blue Sky, and I thought it was a really interesting interview. The fact that he's doing this like big multi-interview in a day, sort of full court press media day, that's something he hasn't done for a while. I think there's some questions about, is that about his political situation eroding? Is that more about it's 6 weeks to the end of the quarter, which again, if you've been following this saga for long enough, you recognize certain patterns, and Elon freaking out about 6 weeks before the end of the quarter is definitely part of the pattern. So asking, oh my God, I'm catching up with the chat. Hey chat, if you have questions or whatever, Eric will be here real soon. So we'll be done with the sort of dialoguing. But thanks for letting me know about the problems with the sound. If you have questions, let me know. If you hit me up on Blue Sky at a DM if you want to join the chat, we definitely bring a few more voices in, at least for a little bit. We'll give you the hook if it's not working. But let's see. So we got chat here from Autolytics. The Musk media blitz is obviously a panic reaction to Tesla sales cratering. He lucked into a stock price surge, but the coverage of bear. It's all about the gazillion-dollar robot market now. Yeah, I mean, this is really it. Like, I think the political situation is worth examining, right? Like, I think it's valuable. I do think that the relationship between Musk and Trump is cooling, but I think it's really dangerous to overstate the likelihood that it's like over, or that Elon's not involved in politics. I really, even if that's true, and if Elon is like really on the outs with Trump, the reason for that is because the reason for that would be sort of twofold. One is that Elon has not produced anything positive really in the political sense. Doge is not popular. Elon does not poll well. There's no upside really for Trump, and actually for Elon at this point, to his involvement in politics. I don't, he was pushing the narrative yesterday that oh, we're getting new buyers in, from conservatives and Republicans or whatever. Automotive revenues are down 20%. Like, who are these new buyers? If these new buyers, you would be giving them cars, like the money's not coming. So the revenue's down. If the revenue turns around in Q3, okay. But Elon, that was actually one of the kind of most shocking just lies from yesterday for me, was like, he just straight up said we don't have a demand problem. Like, you're delusional. Like, the numbers couldn't make it more obvious that you have a demand problem. And yet, so anyway, so yes, I completely agree with this comment. Like I said, if Elon is moving out of politics, it's because there's no upside to him or Trump to his involvement. Like, he has not proven, whether it's Doge, right, or whether it's the funding in Wisconsin, funding the race there, or whether it's him trying to support the AfD in Germany, which also is on the outs and now has been deemed a far right party. He's not accomplishing anything in politics. It's not his thing. I could have told him that. Anybody could have told him this, that politics is not Elon's thing. He doesn't have. He could potentially have. He has some of the skill set for it, but like, he doesn't have the feel for it. He doesn't have a feel for people, and like, at least in this kind of realm, and certainly not for ideology and like political thought. He's just he's the kind of guy that gets a million miles out of being like, oh, I'm just centrist. I mean, like, even as he's gone hard to the right, he's tried to present it as, I'm just this objective centrist, right? Like, that's Elon Musk politics, like, and he's taken it as far as it goes. The flip side of this is that it may well be occurring to Trump that Elon is actually a liability at this point, right? That like, he may sorry, I think I just got an old message saying there's no sound. There's still sound, right, chat? You're hearing some of this? Yeah, I got an exactly from Autolytics. So I know one person is watching and can hear. Sorry, I don't have the YouTube page out, so I have no idea how many people are on. Eric he texted me, should be here any minute. Okay, the politics thing. The real upshot is that Trump may, right, like to the extent that there's like a breach here, it would be, that scenario looks like Trump realizing that Elon is a liability, right? That the problems at Tesla are real, and has a very fine sort of tightrope to walk to kind of pull off what he's trying to pull off business wise. And Eric and I can talk about this more when he gets here. There is some possibility that Trump realizes how vulnerable Elon is and is trying to distance from him to contain the fallout or the potential fallout of Elon Musk's business failure. Like, I know people look at me crazy, like I'm crazy when I say this, but like, Elon Musk is at this moment closer to like bankruptcy than he has been in quite some time. And again, I know it sounds crazy. On paper, he's got hundreds of billions of dollars, but that's the reality. So in any case, we don't know what's the deal here, right? We don't know if this is all Elon Musk being scared or if this is Trump trying to push him away. In any case, if it is Trump trying to push him away, it's because he's vulnerable. And in either of these scenarios, we should keep going. It looks like I am joined by my co-host. Hey, there he is.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, how's it going, man?
Good. We got our times mixed up. So you're drinking on the stream. I was pre-drinking.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, that explains why you're late. We're both drinking on the job, which is strangely not a union shop violation.
It's not.
Your tardiness is noted, though. It's going on your permanent record.
Yep.
You have to stop with the steward at the annual review.
It costs us like some seniority points, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like 5 more tardies and you give up a day of vacation.
So what are we ranting about tonight?
Dude,
Besides me.
yeah, I mean, I was just sort of going all over the place, trying to keep a monologue going. But I think like I think the reason we wanted to talk is was just the big media push yesterday, right? Like that was big. Like that, we've been watching this a while. He does this from time to time. It's not always. I joked on Twitter about how it's like, oh, he only does this when he's in distress because that's the meme format and it's funny.
Yes.
That's not always true. There are times where he knows he's in or there have been times historically, like 20 Q to 2013, which is sort of where this whole game plan started. That was he had just overcome like this crazy obstacle. He pulled off the miracle in the Q1 of 2013 and was like going on the offense. But those are the good old days, and more lately, this kind of stuff almost always means that you were joking about like can't wait for the story to drop.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I was. I mean, I actually don't know if it's a joke, because there's, if you pay attention to media cycles, and I've seen a lot of people that are really, you see a lot of people kind of, just kind of rant in general about the media. They a lot of times they conflate like, different publications, or they don't understand the difference between the op-ed or the different departments. That we've seen like historically that there's been media outlets that Musk has been friendly with, right? And then ones he's hated. And usually when there's like a specific attack that's like kind of out of nowhere, I know he did mention it on that podcast he was on yesterday. Was that the Bloomberg podcast?
Yeah, no, it wasn't well, I guess it was broadcast by Bloomberg podcast, but yeah, it was like it was some event in Qatar, which he wasn't live at.
Yeah, he was streaming from Texas, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'm not sure where he was streaming from.
Yeah, and so he kept. It seems like he kept bringing up the Wall Street Journal, and then he was tweeting about it, and that is, I mean, if I like.
He was already on tilt at that point, though. What set him off was South Africa,
right?
Which is hilarious in light of. I don't know if did you see the White House video today? Oh my God, little sidetrack from what we're talking about. But
wait, are you talking about the baseball, Bruce Springsteen?
No, the president of South Africa was at the White House today, and Trump was trying to like show him like white genocide memes, and he was like, "What?" And at one point, it was so funny. This guy, he's like, "I wish I could give you an airplane," and Trump's like, "Yeah, that would have been nice."
I see. I'm less online with every passing day, and I'm missing out on everything.
It's because you understand the importance of mental health.
Yes. No, that's not why. I'm making myself unhealthy in other ways, but yeah, I mean, like, so I genuinely like and so people that don't understand like how news organizations like work and how stories work, especially when you have someone who's as litigious as Musk, then you see, news outlets obviously give people time to comment. And if it's something that's like pretty innocuous, or it's supported by like a legal filing, then there's less time. But if it's something that's like pretty scandalous, and they will, there's often, you'll give people time. And what Musk has done kind of more so, and this is a trick that a lot of people pull, but Musk does in particular, is that they like wait to the last minute, and they're like, actually give us a week. And then, there's some negotiation back and forth. And so we've seen him like pre-address the story before it comes out, or run PR, or start talking shit about the journalist or the publication in question. Yeah. And so I was speculating that Wall Street Journal has, in terms of like the big three, if you think about, I don't know if it's there. If you look at the big three that you would kind of bunch together, it'd be Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and Washington Post. They've had the best coverage. They've had the best long-form investigations. They won the Pulitzer. Stuff. Yeah,
they just won the Pulitzer for their Elon Musk coverage. Yeah, which they deserve. Like the New York Times has had some decent stuff. The WAPO has been sort of the third, but hands down, I think Wall Street Journal has had the best over the last 2 years. Hands down, best Elon Musk coverage of anyone.
But I think Musk really lives in the present. I think this is kind of the ultimate irony, right? So the belief about him is like, oh, he's like thinking about humanity's future, but really he's he's thinking about the present.
He's white knuckling like minute by minute.
Right.
That, you're absolutely right. Like, this is one of the biggest misperceptions about Elon is that he's like a long-term thinker.
Right.
He's not even remotely a long-term thinker. He's constantly painting himself into corners.
I mean, I think when he has a time to break, that he likes to. I think he likes to muse. I mean, I don't think it's serious musing. I think he does, right? Like but when he's like putting out all these fires, and so like I would not be surprised if there's a pretty bad story. But I mean, it could just be auto sales are down too. That's the other
I interpreted the lashing out at Wall Street Journal as as just like he hadn't really so I don't look at his tweets anymore. Like, I don't go on X, and I haven't looked at his, which has been very freeing. But like, I haven't seen him do a media hit where he's gone after the Wall Street Journal like since they won the Pulitzer, which was really not that long ago. So it was hilarious to see him like ranting about the mainstream media on Bloomberg. It's like, dude, you're not on Rogan. Like, this is not, this isn't Theo Vaughn, bro. Like, you're on the mainstream media, and like this woman is handling you like, but yeah, he clearly, like, he was used to a different era in Bloomberg.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, you had Tom.
Did you hear? Did you see this? Tom is out. I looked this up because this woman, Michelle Hussein, she's incredible. She did a really good interview. She joined from the BBC. She came to Bloomberg in like November, end of last year. I had to look on LinkedIn after like discovering this. Sure enough, Tom Randall was out the exact same time. So like, we've been following this thing for a long time. I was saying this earlier before you joined. Like, there are a lot of little signs that we're entering kind of this end game period in this whole thing. And God, for the sake of both of our mental health, let's hope that's true. But for me, like, Tom Randall out and this woman in and this interview, like, if this is not just total coincidence, if there's the shift at Bloomberg that it looks like there is, that's a pretty significant thing, because clearly Musk trusts them, because otherwise he wouldn't have gone on. He wouldn't have put himself in that position in the first place.
And Bloomberg's a really weird outlet, because they do some like an amazing journalism, but at the end of the day, they're like pro capitalism and pro. I mean, I think a lot of the publications are, but Bloomberg, the news service is so tied with the terminal, and right, there's people that like, there are people that make money on things going up and down, but generally like markets especially are, tilted towards, number go up more so than anything else. And that's why, and to be clear, like I really personally, I really like Dana Hall a lot. And I think she's a really nice person. And I think, and she's done some incredible works on her, but I think, and I've discussed this with some other people in media, I think she's one of those people, and I think she would admit this too. I've talked to her a few times. She's kind of like this optimist in like this really positive way. And so she wants to, she has this tendency to be like, well, let's find both sides. Like, as there's always both sides. And I'm not saying in like the nasty way that New York Times both sides like trans covered. She's like, hey, there's like, and so she's always trying to find this like this middle ground to be like, how do I, present as unbiased as possible? And I think that can create bias, because all the noise surrounding everything else is kind of this positive thing that, like, ultimately, like, investigative journalists for especially Tesla are going to have to be a negative 99% of the time. And you have to be aggressively negative. And I think, Dana Hall's done some incredible work on Musk. Like, I mean, like, so
I think, I think one of Bloomberg's like institutional weaknesses in this regard is that, like you say, they're so market oriented, right? And so it's like a financial news service, which is all like super understandable. But I think one of the really insidious things, and one of the interesting things where this whole, again, sort of end game vibes for me is coming from, is like, in this interview, Musk explicitly, and he's been sort of getting closer to this in the last few earnings calls, of like just ignoring the fundamentals completely and only really talking about how much bigger the market capitalization of Tesla is going to become. And then he made it explicit in this Bloomberg interview, which is, I think, one of the first times that he's been completely explicit about something that he's been implying almost as long as I've been, if not as long as I've been paying attention, which is that if the stock is up, then you can just ignore all the naysaying.
Yeah, that
right?
means the market is weighed in, and like the beautiful, efficient market has decided that it's all good.
Exactly. The market has decided. It's like the market is your Chat GPT. Like Grok said, yes, this is true, and now you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to think about it for yourself.
Right.
Like, and I think one of Bloomberg's and a number of media outlets, like their financial institutions in particular, there tends to be the like report the news, and then you get the commentary from investors about what this means or like what is up and like that whole way of approaching news coverage really, really biases you to someone like Musk, who's been running this game that he's only now sort of pulling the curtain back on completely and making clear what it's been, which is it's inverting what is supposed to be the relationship between information and the markets, right? The markets are supposed to be weighing information and delivering a consensus on it, and what he's saying is that relationship is inverted, that you should reason backwards from the stock price. And again, I think that was a really smart way of hacking Bloomberg and a number of other outlets in terms of like how to improve your coverage given all the problems Tesla's had. But I think at some point it was unsustainable because it really it fucks up market logic at its most fundamental.
Right. And that goes to like how Bloomberg itself is set up. And I think the interesting contrast is like, right. So if you watch Bloomberg TV, it feels almost like I actually like watching Bloomberg TV a good amount. It's so like 1980s coded. It's very, I mean that in a good way.
No, it's a terminal, like the terminal itself.
Right. No, but I mean, I think it's very like, here's the news, here's as like dry as possible. And then you've got like, you go to CNBC and it's just like honking horns and like, like it all kind of
the guests show up in a clown car. Yeah.
Right. But it's interesting because CNBC is tied to NBC, the news organization. And so like they're at I can't do one of these streams without giving a shout out to Laura Kolodny, who's like, you and I both know her, and she's like this outstanding journalist. And there's, I'm not going to say like every journalist at CNBC is amazing, but they have like this, they're tied in with NBC News, which treats itself as a news organization first. And so even with like kind of the clown stuff on TV, that there's, news flows through the organization, whereas like Bloomberg has, especially on the TV front, and there's some excellent written words at Bloomberg on the TV front that gives a more serious face. But at the end of the day, like, it's driven by this, not only just market capitalism, but this investment bank form of market capitalism, which is that markets need to grow and we need to IPO and we need to promote things. And so it's a strange disconnect in the written word versus the written and spoken stuff.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, I mean, right, like the Elon Musk's entire success is a real major warning sign to capitalists everywhere, I think, right? Like if you believe in capitalism and markets, the fundamental to that belief is the belief that it is a way of that, right? That like markets ingest all of, or as much, like a large percentage of, right? It's like an LLM, right? Or whatever, right? It ingests a huge amount of data and it sort of parses it in this sort of decentralized way and sort of spits out optimized, results. And I think that like the success of someone like Musk, and again, like he's at the point now where he's like a magician who's revealing his trick, right? Like by stating this explicitly. Again, this is why I think it's getting to be end times, and I think this is I may be piecing too much of a coherent theory out of random pieces here, but it may be why outlets like Bloomberg are realizing that this is actually a problem. Is that again, it's one thing for Elon Musk because he's been able to get away with it, but like, if you take what Elon Musk has done and then just like imagine a world where everyone is doing that, that's not good for capitalists. I don't think it's not good for capitalism. It's not good for markets for sure, because it really undermines, again, like sort of the basic function of markets.
Right. And I think that's, if you're like, hey, I just got off my, first year of graduate school reading of Das Kapital, right? You'd say that's actually that's actually part of the thesis is that, does eat itself.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like if you could like resurrect Marx and be like, look at this motherfucker, look at him right now, like he would love it. He would be like, yeah, that's the logical endpoint for capitalism, probably.
Right, and I think there's I mean like yeah I mean I don't I think a lot of like the distinct critiques you find in there are like it's pretty crazy how prescient they are. I don't know about the solutions that are proposed, but I think it's worth looking at. Like, hey, this stuff was always predictable and it's kind of repeatable too. I think it happens bigger and it happens faster and it happens in these really absurd ways. And I think like every internet discussion ends up talking about like Nazis, and like honestly like I've like a big thing that I've found myself doing in the last like few months is like you get kind of fat and satisfied in terms of like you're content and satisfied, I guess, and you're like, well, we are better than the people back then, and so we of course, like, Hitler can't come back. And then like, and I'm not saying that Trump is explicitly Hitler, but you're like, oh, actually, here's all these things happen. They're progressing exactly in the same way. And we should have learned, that time and the time before. I mean, it's interesting that Musk is at the spear of it because, is the tip of the spear of it in a way. And it's really hard for, I think I could speak for myself and I assume you, it's like, we fucking warned you people. Like, we warned you. We said this is exactly what would happen. And
this could have just been about a fucking car company, you guys. Like, right. if y'all had just taken Tesla seriously as a car company, like this could have ended a long time ago. No, I mean,
yeah,
for real. Like the fact that people wanted to believe is what got us here. Which is why to me, like, the bumper sticker on the Tesla thing is so I've tried so hard to make my peace with it. I've tried so hard to be like, and I know like some people, it's just like you can't just sell your car. Like you can't just take a bath like that. But also like the price isn't going up, right? Like it's not gonna get better.
Okay.
But the thing that really galls me about it is that like, that like this was not necessary. This is not necessary. You could bought a fucking different car,
Right. And I think I don't know. I think, I agree with you in general because there's two types of Tesla buyers. They're the one that like follow everything and like invest in the stock and have been posting on forums for years. Like if those people buy the sticker, like too bad. But like we do have to like and this is like my point is if people who've bought the car when there were actual shortages of cars, when the price point got really actually pretty attractive and like they actually were improving on quality. So like someone who doesn't like is not super online and doesn't like, right, maybe they didn't pay attention to the Fremont, tantrum over COVID closures. Like that, like, so if someone bought the car in 2019, 2020, 2021, even like, and they bought the car because it was like actually the cheapest option and they wanted to be EV, like those people, like I'm fine with it. I do think that the bumper, like I'd rather they actually not put anything on it. Like I don't mind the idea of, because like right at the end of the day, you're buying, like a lot of the Tesla purchases were for virtue signaling. So why wouldn't you say, hey, look, I tried to virtue signal and it was wrong, and like I can't sell it. And I think that's a fine thing to say, but like for me the framing is what bothers me, because it says I bought this, and I think the biggest one that you see most commonly is I bought this before Elon went crazy.
Yeah.
And the real answer, and this is the real problem, is it should say I bought this before I knew that Musk was crazy. I think that's a huge distinction, because then it says, hey, how did we allow this to happen? Because all of us were complicit, even if you didn't know the difference.
Yeah, and I think the whole Elon Musk went crazy thing, like on the one hand, clearly, like you can't say he didn't go crazy at all, right? Like clearly there's been, right, and you can look at inflection points, and like you can look at 2018, right, and say there was an inflection point there, and you can even see it on that amazing chart of his tweets, like you can see these like steps where he's like sleeping less and tweeting more, and it maps onto clear changes in his behavior, whatever. You can't argue he hasn't gotten crazier,
right.
But I think what bothers me about that narrative is that it absolves the past self.
Right.
It says you did no wrong back then. you were doing, everything was fine. You believed in Elon Musk because he was genuinely a good person. And then he went crazy. And then you just sort of didn't catch up with it soon enough and got stuck holding the bag, like whether that's a car, the whatever, right? Again, I totally get why people want to believe that. And there isn't yet a good counter narrative to that. And I say that as like that's one of the things I'm working on is we need to reframe his entire biography in a way that gets away from that, because again, like people, right? Elon Musk is going to come and go in the broad sweep of things. Like I think if we didn't both believe that, right, we would not have stuck this fucking thing out so long. What matters is the lesson ultimately, like with anything that happens, any of these stories, the lasting legacy is what is the lesson that people take away from it. And I think to me, what I really want to avoid is a situation where people have this like slick, convenient, absolving narrative where it's like, this was not my fault. Even the fraud thing is dangerous because it tells people you were a victim when in fact, no one held a gun to their head and said they had to buy an EV. Yeah, Tesla was the best EV at the time. Right. They didn't have to fucking buy an EV. A hybrid would have been fun, right? And like when you start to balance what you actually saved in emissions by buying an EV, really, especially if you bought multiple EVs over the period that Tesla's existed, right? Versus the harm that you then help subsidize. You know, that calculus is not as clean as people want to think it is.
Right, and I've written about this too, right? Like if you just lived in a city and walked in a city, and if you lived in a 1940s era building in New York that had been maybe slightly re-insulated, that's using hot oil boilers, and you take a bus to work every day or whatever, like you're like, oh, I'm burning stuff and it's like dirty and there's like trash on the street. Like your impact on carbon, which is like the biggest single impact from EVs, is like Tesla as a brand, like, right, it supports the idea that you can have your cake and eat it too. And I've pointed this out multiple times. You can live in your giant suburban area where all the conveniences are ultimately and I'm guilty of it too, right? You're subsidized by carbon, like from the pavement to like how big your house is to how much grass and all this other infrastructure that's in, and Tesla enables you to do it and says, well, I've done my part. And it's like, you probably haven't really. I mean, like ultimately if you live in, if you live in an apartment that the building is heated by, bunker fuel.
Yeah. And like, look, like,
on the climate front,
structural problems are hard. You know what I mean? And like, as an individual, we only have so much power to affect structural things. And like, when someone comes along and says like, hey, you just have to buy a car and all these structural issues don't matter, right? Like we don't have to redevelop our entire physical landscape in order to live sustainably. We just have to plug a different drivetrain into the car and everything's just sort of taken care of. Like, again, I don't blame anyone for wanting to believe this stuff, but I do blame people. And it's not really blame them. It's that the future is going to suck if we're not better at seeing through people who tell us what we want to believe,
right?
Who serve up the easy answer.
And that's why I bring out the whole Nazi example. I mean, yes, it's cliche or whatever, but it's like, no, like maybe right-wing authoritarianism is like not a good thing to like, this is what happens, and you see it happen again and again. It's like, well, I don't know what to say. Like that's why it's like frustrating, because you see it in multiple avenues happening at the same time.
Yeah, and I think I would, I definitely wouldn't say that the current administration is not right-wing and authoritarian. They absolutely are. But like, we were just talking about sort of, why capitalists should hate Musk and what he's doing as much as socialists do and everything, right? Like there is a popular front aspect to this that at some point, like, and I was asked to go to a protest today, and it was very different than the ones I've been used to going to. The Tesla store protests are like, there's no chanting, there's no real organization. It's just people showing up and saying, this is what I care about. And like kind of having a sense of community. And this was much more of a like organized groups with their organized, chants and stuff. And like, it really reinforced to me kind of something I've been feeling for a while, which is like the political situation that we're in right now is not really a traditional left versus right political struggle so much. Really, what a lot of it boils down to, for me at least, and I don't pretend to have all the answers, is that like it's people who are willing to care about anything against people who have absolutely no principles or morals or anything other than sort of self-enrichment and sort of feeding their own id. It's not even just financial. It's not even just greed, financial greed. It's also feeding their id and like punishing the outsider. And you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, but it's interesting because I mean, like you see Musk do it, like you see, and like I think that's the weird thing is like Musk, like, you know, he watched Trump get away with it. It's like Trump is like born to extreme wealth and whatever, and like there's like a realness about Trump that like, right, I don't like, I mean, I think he's fake and whatever, but like there's like he's like very good at like kind of like these social cues that Musk aren't, and he was able to be like, he was able to like, I worked in like coal country, like explicitly, like doing like blue collar adjacent work, you know, leading up to Trump. And like the way that Trump talked to them was this like very populist message, but it's coming from a guy who like sits like, you know, sits on gold toilets, and it worked. And I think Musk saw that and he's like, well, how do I do that too? And I think that's like the weird disconnect, because you hear Musk like rant about George Soros, and it's like, dude, you're like literally doing all the things that the conspiracy theorists say about George Soros, except for like the money you're spending is just like, you know, mind melting. And so that disconnect's really odd too.
Yeah, well, and I mean, like Obama created Elon. You know what I mean? Like, if his relationship, right? Like, and you're complaining about George, like, but I think the difference between Trump and Musk, and the reason that Trump succeeds at politics and Musk doesn't,
is because Trump is funny.
Yeah, well, sort of related to, yes, but like Trump is a brand. Like Trump was like frozen in time in like 1988 or something like that. Like the way, like tariffs, like before Trump came, like he's literally, it's like a caveman was like, it's like Encino Man, so you know, like he was dug up out of the ground, like perfectly preserved from the 1980s, caring about the shit that people cared about back then. And like, there's something about that is, even if you don't love it or whatever, like part of it is that he's the caricature of the rich guy, right? But part of it, I think, really is that he's just always been that same character. You can watch him on Josie Riesman was posting was a really great video of her talking about her book about neo kayfabe and pro wrestling and how it's affected the Trump, like inflected the Trump administration. And like, there's video of him at WWE events where he's like doing these funny scripts with Vince McMahon, and they're fake slapping each other, and it's all this like drama, but like he's playing that exactly the same as he plays being in White House. Like, it's all consistent, and you go back to the 80s and he's always been the same. Elon's problem is that he had a good brand and he didn't have the discipline to stick with it. I don't think Trump has the discipline necessarily. I think it's the lack of imagination that keeps him stuck in his brand. But I think that's Elon's problem, is that he hasn't been able to commit to his brand.
Right. I think that, yeah. And I think because it's like, well, what, like, I mean, because the brand with Trump, it's easier for Trump to do it because Trump's brand has always been like, Trump is number one. Right.
Musk gold-plated king of everything. Yeah,
but he puts his name on stuff, right? But like Musk hides, and I think that's why. Like, I know he didn't come up with the name Tesla Motors, but you're hiding behind Nikola Tesla. You're saying, oh, we're gonna do like, oh, it's actually about Mars. Whereas like Trump would be like, I want to go to Mars because I want a Trump Tower on Mars. And so like, so there's this like, there's this weird.
I want to go to Mars because I could make it more tasteful.
Right. Yes, I mean, and I think the pro wrestling thing is actually really fascinating, because this is actually one interesting thing about pro wrestling is if you actually look at the political demographics of wrestling, there's a lot more age diversity than people realize. There's a lot of ethnic diversity, including Latino and Black. And even among like their white viewers, they are a lot more Democratic coded. They're more progressive than people think.
Yeah. And I did not realize this. This is something that I've had to have my eyes open to in recent years, because I'm culturally not from that world at all.
And so McMahon is obviously like the opposite of that. And so, but McMahon is smart in the same way that Trump is that he's like, So every time, like, I think McMahon's like tried to turn it into this political thing, and it always, at the end of the day, he's like, okay, well, I make my money from entertainment, so whatever. And so they keep introducing these characters that are like caricatures of like Soviets or like communists or whatever. Like they've introduced characters that are like basically like these caricatures of what people think of like there's actually some very clever people that have written scripts for WWE that like are people that are like referencing like, you know, 19th century like inner battles with like Marxism, and like they try to turn him into a heel, and then everyone like loves, you know, Mr. Communist, the red, or like, you know, there's like, and so there's been this tension in WWE in that WWE owns it, and that's why like Vince McMahon is the bad guy.
Yeah.
And the kayfabe is this weird thing where it's like everyone knows it's fake, but also it's like real, and so like people know logically, I'm giving money to Vince McMahon, this bad person, and I hate him and I boo at him because he's playing the person who he actually is in real life. But it's all this like, it's like this parallel dimension to reality, and it's enough to give them like, they hate Vince McMahon and they know they're giving him money, but it's the action of going through and like boo this man and watching him get hit over the head with a chair and like get owned.
Because he knows what he's doing, playing the heel. But I think you're onto something too, which is that like a strong like character brand like Trump has can play, and I've seen just in this one reason, I should find it and post it to the chat, because it's great and people should watch it. But just in this one sort of clip, they show him both sort of being the heel himself, the rich Trump sort of playing the rich guy, but also the hero. Like, and I think this is what pro wrestling is. One of the lessons maybe from this is that a great character, and Hulk Hogan did this, and John Cena did it, right? Like, they will be the face and they will be the heel. They'll be the good guy and they'll be the bad guy. And you know you have a strong brand when you can move between those, and it works kind of on both of those levels. And I think this is what Elon hasn't figured out, is that Elon's propelled by, like, I think, a genuine and frankly at this point extremely pathetic desire to, like, genuine desire to just be loved and adored.
Yeah, he wants a mommy. He wants a real mommy.
He doesn't have, I don't know what the word even is, to like be like, yeah, I'm gonna be the heel for a little bit here. You know, we're gonna show him dark Elon. Like, I think he's been sort of trying to do that with the MAGA hat and like, but like
he doesn't believe it. He doesn't jump into it because he's still like, he wants to be like, he's he's got like, oh, I've got the epic chainsaw. And he's like, I'm doing the chainsaw. Like, I'm doing the chainsaw to save America. Like, right. Like, whereas like Trump would be like, or like, you know, Vince McMahon would be like, no, I'm doing the chainsaw now. Like, I'm on my chainsaw hit.
Yeah.
And Musk will do that, but it's this like rapid, you know, shifting that's like, it's weird and it's inauthentic.
Yeah. And like Trump has the same level, whether he's the good guy or the bad guy, there's always this sense that he's being a little arch with it. Right? That like it's not just, oh, I'm being real. And I think this is something that Elon, like, he lucked into his whole thing of being this like character, this figure. It wasn't something that he like consciously set out to do. So I think he struggles on a really basic level. And I relate to that. Like, playing a character is hard. Right. If you haven't, it's something that you have to develop a feel for. And like, even though he is playing a character, he's like one of those actors that can only play the same person over, right? He's like the Vince Vaughn, you know?
Right.
Like, he can only play the same guy, and like just happens to be a lot of movies that need that kind of guy.
Right. But I think it's like the whole thing is like, right. So like Musk reposts people's memes, right? But he doesn't, it's like, oh, he knows this thing is funny, but because there's no like, right, and the best memes are either like self-referential or they're ironic or whatever. He's like, well, I'm posting this thing, it's funny, and people like funny people or whatever. But like, Trump lives his life and does things like as a meme, and so it's like Musk is like the, you know, it's like, oh, I'm just like replicating a meme that someone else because I'll get attention for it. I don't think he understands like why a meme is funny. I really just don't.
There's, I mean, all of the evidence is pretty clear that he absolutely doesn't. And yeah, and I mean, like, I think part of it is, you know, and again, like, it's funny how many of Elon's like issues I recognize in myself, because I was also sort of like this isolated kid who didn't really like sort of you know, like I wasn't shaped by popular culture. I didn't watch professional wrestling. Like I read weird, obscure, like grown up books and stuff. You know what I mean? Like I was sort of that kind of kid too. And I think part of Elon, part like I would not be able to do, right? Like if life had thrown me in this weird trajectory like Elon's and put me in that, like I would not be able to do what Trump does. Like the having that sense of detachment almost about you playing yourself as a character. That's something I think, right? Like if you've always been wealthy, maybe that comes a little bit easier in a certain sense. Maybe there are other, but then also like, I think being authentically connected to something like professional wrestling, where that is what it is. It's all characters and narratives. And there's this whole thing about like, it's all fake and yet people can't get enough of it, you know? And it creates this, it's a performance. And Elon is just not a performer. He's never been a performer. His whole brand was the sort of guy who's sort of like stammering and inarticulate. And that was authenticity at a time where authenticity mattered. And I think what's interesting too, is that Elon has precipitated and been part of this change in how we use information and the information economy. But like, he has not adapted with the change that he created. He's like Henry Ford this way, right? Mm-hmm. Where Henry Ford created the auto industry and just absolutely dominated with the Model T, and didn't realize that like he saturated the market and there was nowhere to go. And GM came along and realized if we offer people credit and make fancier cars, then even if we're selling the same amount of cars, we'll make way more profit. Right. And all of a sudden Ford went from like, I don't know, 80% of the market or like whatever, the 100% dominant player to almost going out of business within a few years. And it was because Henry Ford created this industrial revolution that then created circumstances, material conditions that he didn't understand. They were so distant from the Midwest farm boy existence that he came out of that he couldn't understand the world that he created. And I feel like Elon has kind of a similar problem that way.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I don't know. I think it's just so funny because when you say like Musk doesn't know how to give a performance, I'm like, part of me's like, well, he's lying, but I think you talk about performance as like an art versus just like I'm just like lying.
Yeah, I don't just mean lying. Like lie, anyone can lie. But like, and again, like you know, Elon has been playing a character, right? He has been
a smart guy,
the shy, smart guy who's not polished. He's not a, you know, slide deck presenter, slick dude in a suit, business guy, even though he is essentially more finance bro than tech bro.
He's a sales guy, is what he is. Like,
yeah, he's a sales guy, but he plays the role of the tech founder, and yeah, he has played that role well. But again, like, I guess part of it is just how we perceive tech guys has changed, and I think part of that is that like he played that role at a time where it was like if you could sort of play that role, you were just assumed very little was asked of you,
right?
And now that being a tech guy has become this much more ambivalent thing, and people are like, well, you know, are you the kind of tech guy that we hate? Because probably because we kind of hate most of them, you know, more and more all the time. Like that's a challenge that he can't rise to, sort of. I don't know. We're a little sidetracked, I guess.
No, but I think it's really fascinating. Like if you look at like Sam Altman, for example, like as I call him, Dollar Store Musk.
Oh my God.
So, I mean, like, what's interesting about him is that he's kind of circling back to the Steve Jobs mold, because when people look at Steve Jobs, they think, oh, he's like this like brilliant whatever. And like Steve Jobs was like an ideas guy. Like he was like, oh, like make this and like hire the smartest people and say like,
that's not good enough. Go back and work harder on it and then bring it back.
And that's what Musk did. But then he turned into this like engineering thing. And like Altman's is like pretty shameless about being like, yeah, I'm like the ideas guy. I'm not like I have these big conceptual ideas or whatever.
My big idea is giving Johnny Ives billions of dollars.
Yeah, well, yes, I saw that, and it's just like I don't know, but
no, but I mean, I think it's emblematic. Elon could not make a move like that.
Right. No, I don't think so either. I mean, because he's not that smart. I mean,
well, he thinks that he drinks his own Kool-Aid. Yeah. Is really the problem. He's like, why would I need Johnny Ives? Like, I created the Model S. Like, I think in his head, like he really thinks of himself as being on a Steve Jobs level in terms of like the products that he has created.
Right. And the irony is that by the time he got to the point where he did have the level of autonomy and like whatever, is that Steve Jobs knew when he didn't know something, right? So if a material like right, so you'd say make it look like this or make it work like this, but if a material science person, and they went actually Apple went through the same thing. They wanted to get better screens that wouldn't scratch as easily, and so they were looking at different materials, including like straight sapphire, and
GTAT baby.
Yes.
Love that story.
Yeah.
So few people know about it. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, we should actually that's actually we should
GTAT was like the future is not evenly distributed yet.
Right.
Yeah.
But the thing is like so if you look at that, right, and it was impractical and it was too expensive and there were different shatter concerns, there were and if Steve Jobs had said like, the material scientist said, hey, this product, like at the price and whatever, the performance is like really good on scratches, but it shatters and explodes and it conducts whatever differently. Like whereas like Musk, and I think this is the ultimate irony, is by the time that Musk got to the level of like true control, not just, he's always had control internally, but you didn't have like outside pressures from, other suppliers or financiers, where by the time he got full control and say whatever, we ended up with a fucking Cybertruck and we ended up with the Starship, and the Starship is going the same way as Cybertruck. And
that's right.
On that. So that's
right. Well, no, I think right, like that. It's that's what drinking your own Kool-Aid gets you. Right. He had talent and knew how to. Right. So again, I was talking before about sort of reframing the narrative around Musk. And I think like for me, one of the big breakthroughs on this is realizing that both Tesla and SpaceX didn't start as business ideas. They started with him wanting to be feeling like a rich guy and wanting to buy something.
Right.
He wanted to buy a rocket for the Mars Society and he wanted to buy an electric sports car for himself.
Right.
And like, if you think about his management style at Tesla over the years, especially when it was more successful in like the Roadster and the Model S days, the way people who were there and involved in that process and who worked with him, who oftentimes have like relatively positive things to say about him, some of them very positive, although the suck up factor and a whole bunch of other stuff, you got to adjust for. But the way that I think about that success is that Musk was playing the role of the customer. He was a well-informed customer, right? And that in turn feeds another sort of breakthrough for me, which is that like Tesla did not become Tesla because of electric cars or the environment or any of that stuff. Tesla became Tesla fundamentally because it recognized that there was a segment of buyers in the tech sector that had a lot of money and a lot of and a sense of identity that the car industry didn't understand. The car industry didn't understand that tech people wanted cars that reflected their vision of technology and how it works and the role it plays in the society, and that reflected their ascendant power. And so Musk, as the customer, right, of Tesla and running that company as I'm the customer for the product, fed that success perfectly because he was that guy. He was part of that culture. He was tapped into its values. And so if he was satisfied as a customer, Tesla was going to succeed with that very, very wealthy market segment. Right. To me, this is a much more logical way of understanding Tesla's success and Musk's role in it than any kind of technological insight that he might have, or any of the other sort of traditional ways of thinking about him as like a technology or engineering or physics even genius.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's like we talk about trade-offs all the time, right? And that's like, I think that's like the whole thing. Like we were talking about like a trade-off of like, what do you have to give up for to plug an EV in for a petrol or a gasoline fired car. And I think the thing with like all these trade-offs is that like this is where like if you give someone who thinks they're a lot smarter than they are, who's surrounded by yes men. And I think like it's like literally what happened is if you talk to people, and I don't know how much of your reporting has touched on this, and I don't want to ruin anything in your book, but I mean like from the conversations I've had,
that's my job.
Right. But it's like, yeah, I mean like from the conversations I've had with people internal or like at least adjacent to it, it's like there were like some ideas that you could do different stuff, like right prices were coming down on stainless steel, and like there was a lot of Chinese stainless steel coming onto the market, and stainless steel has some incredible properties, and someone gasses you up on it and says like, hey, this is like, it's like this much more, scratch proof or crush proof or, tear proof or rust proof than all these other metals. And then so it says, and so then like, Musk is like, well,
and by the way, you don't have to paint it, so you don't need a paint shop. Which this is what we originally bonded over, was Tesla's total inability to operate a paint shop.
Well, and even putting that aside, like I'd rather not run a paint shop either. There's like an appeal to it, and so like, well, you say like, oh well, now I'm just going to make everything out of stainless steel, and everyone else who didn't make vehicles out of stainless steel, they're just like a fucking idiot or whatever, and like, and if you look at like Starship, and like I'm sure there's similar parallels from what I've seen on on Cybertruck, is it's like, when they're making like, right, we're going to make the biggest rocket, and not only are we going to change, a few things about the rocket, we're going to change everything from top to bottom, and you don't know all of those single things, all those.
How do you isolate the variables?
Right.
Yeah, no, and this is right. This is the and I think this is like the crux of why is it that we've all, or so at least for me, I'll just speak for myself, why I've thought like a reckoning was inevitable, eventually with Tesla, is that fundamentally bringing a software perspective to hardware is just like to this kind of hardware in particular. It just isn't. It doesn't work, and I think this is like a really great example of it, right? Like what is known to work in the auto industry? Like the one principle that is most proven to contribute to success in the auto industry is Kaizen. It's continuous improvement, right? Toyota's core sort of, you distill everything that Toyota has done down to one philosophy. It's the idea that you make everybody in your organization makes a tiny little step towards improved efficiency every single day, and that at scale, all that whole culture adds up to these massive gains of efficiency. And it all has to be steady, relentless drilling down. And you're absolutely right. You put your finger on it perfectly, which is that if you change everything, if you're going innovative, clean sheet, blue sky thinking, all of this fucking Silicon Valley bullshit, you don't know.
Right.
You don't isolate, you don't learn, you don't isolate your variables, and you don't figure out what the problem is, and you just have a fucking mess on your hands that you're just constantly trying to fix over the entire life of the vehicle.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
But it is pretty remarkable how, like, even then, right? And part of this is because they had such fat margins because people were paying, is like their existing models, like they've improved quality. Like, I mean, it's been like a fucking pain in the ass, and it's taken longer than it should have, but they have improved. So I don't know.
Well,
it's worth something, I guess.
So Tesla as a company is essentially, it's the Model 3 and the Model Y. Right. Like that's the whole business now. And like, I've been pretty, like, I have some criticisms of it. It's not, these are not perfect cars by a long shot. They have a number of problems, but they're hands down Tesla's best vehicles. No, in their entire history of the company, no question. Doug Field, I think, doesn't get the credit he deserves, at least outside of the industry. Inside the auto industry, I think everyone knows that the Model 3 and by extension the Model Y, like, he put that program on the foundation that allowed it to succeed. Like, everyone I know who's ever worked with that guy says he's incredibly brilliant, and I haven't really seen a lot to not think that. And he had to manage all of Elon's customer concerns, right? On top of all that, and what they were able to produce as a result is impressive. It really is. Like, now, again, there were production hell was a whole thing, right? Elon wanted to have a fully automated factory. There were so many. Elon almost fucked it up in so many ways. But you're right. Like, it was a decent foundation, and they've made improvements. The problem now is what next?
Yeah.
Right. Like you're right. Like they are. It's funny because from a product perspective now, their core of their business, all they know how to do is iterate on the design side. Right. All they're doing is refresh. And we know there's, I mean, Elon says there's more product coming. We don't know anything about it other than that they don't have to retool the plant, which means that it's not actually new.
Right.
And so it's weird that you're right. It's a good point. Like there is some iterativeness, but again, that's clearly the part of the business that Elon has just sort of let go and sort of just said, make it work.
Well,
and sort of let people make it work and focus on the Cybertruck.
Well, the ironic thing is like this, you've seen the same thing happen at SpaceX, right? Like you've got this big push and like,
right.
and like the Falcon program, like it had a lot of early failures, but like with how fast they got to market with that vehicle.
It's a pretty well-oiled machine.
Yeah. No, the actual like launch. I think there's been some turnover recently in that department, but they're very efficient and they're very well respected because they are a good service provider and they can. I don't know how profitable it is on the back end, the actual launches.
Right.
I know the satellite business that they run, Starlink, makes everything very unprofitable, despite what people will tell you. But the actual launch operations, they're it's pretty impressive. They're able to, they land rockets and they refurbish them, and so.
But they're not like right. Like if you were to take the Falcon 9 and you were to iterate. Right.
That's what they do.
But instead it's the Cybertruck. They went right. And you see this with Tesla too, right? Like it's these extremes of you either have like the Model S and then the Model X, which was supposed to be the profit plumper for the Model S, but like they ended up with like 10% parts commonality or maybe like 20% parts commonality. So there was no profit in the Model A. It was like a complete fuck up of how you're supposed to take a car chassis and add incremental, not just volume, but profit by creating a crossover version. They just completely screwed up the most basic, like how to make money in the car game plan with the Model X. And then they went to the Model Y and it was like, they went to the exact opposite of extremes, which is you almost can't tell the difference between a Model 3 and a Model Y, right? Like they're so similar that they should have just made the Model Y the car. And probably now I'm guessing that's probably like 80% of that. They combine the volume. It's probably 80% Y and 20% 3 at this point. But it's like, and again, like there's no culture, right? Like a culture understands that there's a right way of doing things. And when you're constantly swinging back and forth between different approaches, it proves that you're flailing, that you haven't found an approach to success that you're confident in.
Right. Have I ever told you my most controversial? You'll probably not want to talk to me afterwards. My thing about Tesla that I enjoy the most.
No,
I love the stupid Falcon wing doors on the X. I think they're fantastic. I love them. I know from a aspirational like design engineering standpoint, and like they stand out, but they're not while the car is driving. Like, I think they're fabulous. And I know it's stupid and I know they're expensive and I know it's not workable at scale, but I love those stupid doors. I think they're fantastic.
A long time ago now, I'm trying to remember when it was like, the X had been out for a while. It was like 2018, 19, I don't know, something like that. It was pre-pandemic. A buddy of mine rented a Model X because he had to go up to Seattle for a meeting. And I didn't have anything better to do, so I was like, yeah, I'll go up with you for the day. I'll hang out in Seattle, do some work while you're in your meeting, and we'll, check out the Model X. And like, it was the worst assembled vehicle. Like just the quality on that thing. I think it was maybe like 2017. It had been out for like almost 2 years. And I thought, oh, surely they've it was just like, and and I see this all the time too. Like you have your door handles right next to each other and you can't get the quality such that it's not like as it's driving past at 20 miles an hour, I can see 30 miles an hour. I can see that the goddamn door handles don't fucking match. But and then autopilot was like a complete, this was probably 2017 because autopilot was just horrible then. It was like it was terrifying using it. I didn't mind the adaptive cruise control, but as soon as you got the lane, it was just like all over the lane and just like so unreliable and so bad. But like you put it in the parking lot and you do the like Christmas Carol thing where the lights and the doors go up and it's like this stupid show and you're like, this is so dumb, but I get why people love it. I do. Like it makes sense. And honestly, like I feel like today you see the Model X is the only Tesla vehicle that you regularly see women driving, for me, just anecdotally. It's the only one. And I kind of get it. Like if you're driving, like the Model X is like the Tesla that I kind of get people driving, because what else are you gonna fucking drive? There's nothing that's that goofy. Like if you like a goofy car, and like I drive a pretty goofy car, like I have some sympathy. Like if you want a truly goofy over the top car, like the Model X delivers on that in a way that really not much else does. The Model 3 and the Model Y, like whatever, get a fucking Chevy equal, whatever you know what I mean? Like get literally like any EV, it doesn't matter. But with the Model X, like I actually kind of get it. It's so goofy. Like go for it.
Yeah. I like those doors. I don't know. I think they're cool.
Yeah.
So we've been like, we're waxing on stuff that's happening in the past. But
we should not. But before, since you made me monologue for quite a while, I'm gonna make you monologue for a sec while I go get a little bit more Kirkland signature Chateauneuf de Pape, and I'll be right back.
Okay, I'm gonna see what the comments are saying.
It's gonna be like 5 minutes.
All right. Okay. Now we can say mean things about Ed while he's gone. All right. Let's see. Comments, questions, concern. We're comparing Model Y. All right. Okay. All right. Okay. I'm now monologuing. Let us see. Okay. So we had today. Today we had more of the media tour from Musk. That was quick. Look, that wasn't even a monologue. I was just like, okay.
Dude, so when we went live, I was by myself, I'm monologuing, and like 3 minutes in, I start getting texts and people are like, you're muted. There's no sound. I literally, the first 3 minutes of this stream was me talking on mute.
Yeah, you like this, like,
we really knocked this one out of the park. By the way, I wanted to say, I'm wearing the very latest Elon Musk hater wear. It's backwards. It says existence shouldn't be revolutionary. This is a t-shirt that is made by Wildfang, which is a company I did not know is here in Portland, Oregon. I found out because this t-shirt is a collab between them and the one and only Vivian Wilson, whose every move I follow, because what kind of hater would I be? Like she is the goddess of hater. She is the goddess of the hater. Yeah, really, honestly, Azalea Banks kind of like we deserve a better queen than Azalea. So Vivian's it. So anyway, when I saw that she's doing a big collab, they got her all over the cover of the store in downtown Portland. And so I was like, I have to have one of those. So go check out Wildfang, buy it. It's a Portland-based company. It's a women's apparel store, but they believe in challenging gender norms. And here I am.
Yes.
If you're a real hater,
you're existing. Yeah. Yep, that's right.
And by the way, the fact that I haven't already spilled red wine on a brand new white shirt is incredible. Like mathematically, this should have happened like 3 times already.
Right. That's why you only wear dark clothes. That's yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I was wearing. I don't think did. I tell you this? I think maybe I told you this. That I was in. I was at a coffee shop. I just dropping my kid off at school, and I was at a coffee shop, and I was wearing my Blue Sky shirt. And the No More Caesars, and someone
yeah. I almost wore that on stream. I couldn't find it.
Yeah, this is like in Houston too. Someone comes up to me and they're like,
you told me about that. I'm super jealous. I wore it to the grocery store here, and no one came up to me. This person was
like a lurker, and they're like, oh, this is a cool shirt. Like I know I'd seen it somewhere. Like, when did you get it or whatever? I'm like, whoa, it's like a real life poster. And I talked to them for a few minutes, and they're like, oh, are you like a big post? Or like, do you post a lot? I'm like, yeah. And I was like, here's my account or whatever. And they're like, oh, I follow you. And I was like, and then they have like a call or something, and they disappeared. So like they follow me, and I think they're a non-poster, but I don't know. Anyway, so that was pretty weird.
Yeah. Here's a comment. I kind of want to just like at least chat about this really briefly, just because. So I posted about this on Blue Sky yesterday evening. Elon Musk had a quote in his CNBC interview yesterday where he sort of implied, he didn't explicitly say what was going on, but he basically said like, we have like humans are remotely monitoring the fleet of like 10 vehicles, like 10 robo taxis that are going to be in Austin. And that like as the safety of the fleet improves, we'll have fewer of them. And I just like think it's really important to say at every turn, like this is so not normal.
Wait, can you repeat that again? Because that didn't make any sense at all.
Yeah. So again, what he was saying was vague, which was right. So we know there've been ads for people hiring. Tesla's been hiring teleoperation people. Now, teleoperation is something that exists in the rest of the AV industry. Okay. What Elon Musk, and we got to separate those things out. What Elon Musk said was, as the safety of our fleet in Austin improves, we'll need fewer monitoring them. And like, I feel like people, without knowing about this stuff, they assume that this is how everyone does teleop. That right. Those humans are there with their hands, wherever they might be, whether it's in California or in India or wherever, with their hands hovered over a video game controller or a video game steering wheel, ready to take over when the AV system fails.
Yeah.
It's a really important thing to understand about AVs and about this technology in general. Like, when you're developing a system, and this is supposed to be like, this is I don't want to get too deep. When you're developing a system, an automated driving system, if like Tesla, you always have a human there, right? When you're doing what's called like failure mode analysis, which is like when you're going through every part of the system and saying, what if this breaks? What if this breaks? What if this doesn't work as it's supposed to? Blah, 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 blah. Like, how do you manage the impacts of failure in any part of the system? The vast majority in any kind of human in the loop system is just the human takes care of it. The human is the ultimate backstop. And it's because we're really good at stuff. I don't like to talk about this because that sort of like goes against the whole pitch for what they're trying to sell. Right. But that's the reality of it. And whether, no matter how much you want to try and avoid it, as you're developing and iterating on that system over time, that reality gets baked into how the system is developed. And so like, right, if you're selling as a driver assistance system to people, if you're getting a lot of like false positives, right, where and Tesla's had this problem with quote unquote phantom braking, which is where the system you have an autopilot that'll just break all of a sudden for something that's not there. Like, people lose trust in that pretty quickly, or they stop seeing the value in it pretty quickly. And so what you do with that kind of human in the loop system is you err on the side of false negatives, which means there is something that you don't want to hit, but the system doesn't break for it. And you can do that because at the end of the day, if the human doesn't break for it, you just blame them.
Right. You
just say it was their fault. They should have been paying attention. It was in the fine print. Fuck them. Right. And this is how Tesla has operated for the 8 years that it's been, well, more than 8 years. It's really 10 years. 2015, fall of 2015 was when autopilot first came out. They've always operated the same way. And so that reality gets baked into the system. And the layman's way of understanding this is that the system is like more aggressive or more risk tolerant, because at the end of the day, it has that backstop, and it has always had that backstop. And it's impossible for even the developers to make that leap beyond that word, right? It's a very difficult thing to, whereas with a Waymo, the Waymo's been on the street for a really long time. They just announced they had 10 million fully driverless rides on public roads. So that's right. No one behind the wheel on public roads, 10 million rides. Now, some of those may have been short, some of them may have been longer, whatever. That's huge. Like, that's a big deal. And when you read about the problems that Waymo has, whether it's in Phoenix or in San Francisco or now more recently in LA, it's not that Waymo's crash. The Waymo crash record is great. Like the vast majority of Waymo crashes that Waymo's have been in have just them being hit by other people, including Teslas. Right. Teslas hit Waymos, which I love. And it's because that system is designed from the ground up to never have a human backup. And so when you're engineering it and you're doing your failure mode analysis, you don't have the perfect ultimate backstop. And so you always tune every part of that system to be more conservative. And so the common failure mode for Waymos is they get stuck. And it's not just Waymos too. This is true of like every legitimate L4 developer, because they're really developing these systems to be driverless from the ground up. So the failure mode is that they get stuck. And so that's what teleop is for. And again, like some companies, it's literally they pass over control to someone sitting in a phone center with a video game steering wheel, and they literally drive the car. Waymo and others do something slightly different, which is where someone essentially drags and drops breadcrumbs with a mouse on a screen, is how they describe it. But essentially, just when the system is stuck, it just gives it routing around the obstacle, and then the system re-engages and it's off again.
Right, but just really quick, I mean, some of that is also like I mean, I know we always say like, oh, well, like, you know, Tesla's doing X, Y, Z wrong, but I think I mean, like, there's hubris across the board, which is like, right, you like there was backlash against Waymos, and they're like, so when they say like, oh, we need to like plan around humans, they're planning around drunk humans or reckless humans,
right?
Like I think part of it, and this is like kind of the hubris that's common, that is not unique to Tesla, where they're like, oh, maybe people will be like sick of these fucking cars because of what they're doing to gentrification or whatever, and people are just going to stand in front of them, or people are going to take advantage of them to, like, you know, intimidate women driving them, and so they anticipated like the normal course of business, human fuckery, driving drunk, being careless, riding a bike, or, you know, being a pedestrian, which are all like, but they don't have like that, like deliberately, like they I don't think they plan their system for like people like deliberately like not want those cars to like be around. I think that's what's fascinating to me, and I think that's like something also Tesla misses too. But I think that's the thing that I always like think about, is like, I don't know, like that's like the human part they didn't consider.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, so, and it's also right. Like I think just Teslas they're gonna crash. Like I think they, you know, with a fleet of 10, they can sort of manage the risk. But again, I mean, like this goes all the way to the decision to use just cameras alone. I mean, that is taking on a huge amount of risk. Those systems have to make logical leaps about the scene around them for lack of data.
Right.
And again, their reasoning may be strong fundamentally, and their ability to reason may be strong, but because they rely on a camera alone, they have to take leaps of faith. And you and I do this all the time when we drive, right? We're constantly driving at distances to people where if they were to just slam on the brakes all of a sudden for no reason, we'd be fucked. Right. And we're doing that on faith that they're not going to do that, or that if they're going to start to brake, they're going to do it in a way that allows us to not hit them. Teslas don't have that, you know, the fine reasoning, and they just, so they're taking those kinds of risks. Whereas a Waymo, with like the incredible perception that they have, like they just, that risk level is not alone. That's at a high level. And that gets way before, that's just on the perception level before you get to actually programming behaviors and things like that, which I think also in a fully driverless system, again, because ultimately you have a functional safety engineer going through all of this and saying, you know,
right.
And they're looking at the results out in the real world and saying every single time, like when there's a choice between take a risk that is not worth taking versus just sit there and stop in the middle of the road and annoy some people, always take option B. Always.
Right. And
whereas with Tesla, they can take option A. And again, like they have not just someone to save their asses, but if that person doesn't save their ass, then they're the scapegoat.
Right. And I think that's like you're like vision only. It's like, actually, if you listen to like Musk's original logic for, is like, well, like we have like, you know, so many more total megapixels, and it's in the human eyes, and also they can see in all directions all at once. It's like, oh, well, this like is logical, but then it's like, what do you actually use when you're driving? Like when you're driving, your body, like your whole nervous system detects very tiny changes in pressure. Auditory clues are not just like, oh, here's a sound over here. Like the sensation when someone's standing behind you and you have no real auditory reason to believe it. Why do you know that? Because there are like, you have like tiny hairs everywhere. Like there's like all these sensory perceptions that like, even if you say like, hey, it's got more total pixels than the human retina has or whatever, like that's missing out on that portion of it too, which is like, I think that's like really important, is that like you're like, we need to make something that's outside of the human, but we're going to reference it back to a human, but also like be inadequate in not having the sense of sound or pressure or whatever. But there's also like contextual clues too, like, right? So you talk about like you talk about trust. Like if I'm following someone closer than that, what's the official rule? It's like 1 second for every 10 miles per hour, which is like an insane distance.
Our roads would be so inefficient if
Yeah.
everyone
Well,
followed that
but
rule.
that is like technically the rule. But and so no one does that. But you talk about trust, but trust isn't just like guaranteed because of people on the road. Like
That's right.
you have an innate sense, especially if
Yes.
you've been on the road long enough. If someone's drunk driving, they're not necessarily swerving. There are little tiny things that you're like, I mean, like I guess an algorithm
Sometimes not so tiny, but yeah.
But sometimes there's like just like the length of time between like them tapping the brakes or like not even like swerving. Like there's certain things, and your brain is like, oh, I made a connection, and you won't even like it's gonna get completely glossed over if you're doing vision only or whatever. Like
well, and even I mean, so some of those
humans are perceptive, as it turns out. Like I mean, like that's the thing.
Extremely, yeah. No, and this is again something I'm including a lot in the book. Like one of the big breakthroughs for me was realizing one of the ways Tesla has gotten away with this whole thing, this belief that their cars are driving themselves, is that people see the steering wheel moving and that the braking and acceleration is automated, and they think, well, that's all there is to driving. And it's because the hard part of driving, like 90% of the driving task, is perception, is scanning the road scene around you, identifying the different actors on it, understanding where they might go in the future, where it's possible for them to go in the future, where it's likely to go for them to go in the future, what that world looks like 3 seconds from now, how are you going to map through it, all of this stuff that we are just doing without realizing it, without thinking it. This is where the real work is being done, and people don't understand it. And this is why people think like, oh, well, humans are dumb and bad at driving. And like, no, like humans drive 3 trillion miles a year just in the US. Like right. Waymo has the hands down the best statistical safety claim in the AV sector, and that's based on 25 million miles. That's not a statistical, and that's over years. That's not a statistical rounding error compared to 3 trillion miles, right? Like that's whatever. It's actually a decent sample size, but it's nowhere close to 3 trillion. But you're absolutely right. Like we interpret so much constantly about what's going on around us. And I think one of the interesting things is like, there's also a certain amount of that you don't even want computers to try and do. You know what I mean? Like there's certain kinds of empathy or like trying to give our ability to put ourselves in the mind of others around us is it's a pretty unique skill. And
it's like a trolley problem, right? I mean, it's like do the trolley problem real time. And like, I think more humans will get probably a better empathetic answer than you're going to get from a computer algorithm.
Totally.
Well, because yeah, I mean, like it's, and so I think the thing that I always think of also too is like, there's like, I think this goes back to, taking a step back with like what we talk about, like the tech problem, right? And that these people have all injected themselves into the White House, and they've like, oh, we're going to like automate away like federal government jobs with LLMs because and like this is like the whole thing is like if you've seen those robots, right? The robots have you seen like the omelet making robots that are like they have like really cool motors or whatever, and like sure enough, if someone's not paying attention long enough, these are like very sophisticated, like finely tuned robots. Like at some point, like the ingredients are going to back up, and you're going to end up with like a pile of half broken eggs, right? Because and so you see that, and it's like the same thing. Like people are like people dehumanize, right? Like people that work on a grill. You're like, well, you're flipping burgers. And it's like, no, flipping burgers, like, okay, you flip the burger, right? You take the square meat patty or like whatever, the meat patty that's in the freezer, you take it out and you drop it on the grill in this location, you smash it and you cook it for X minutes per side, you flip it, right? And you're like, well, surely a robot can do that. But if you actually watch someone at a grill, it's like the grill isn't like its own, it's not like a, it's not, it's dynamic. It's a 3D space. And so if you watch someone flipping the grill, like it may look like they're a robot. They put the same, like if you've seen someone looking at White Castle or whatever, like they're all in a row and you're like, oh, he's doing the same thing every time. But actually every time they do it, there's a little bit more grease. Maybe it's a little bit more human in the restaurant.
Gotta get some of the crust off that grill. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Or like the burger patty. Oh, guess what happens? The burger patties slid a 1/4 inch to the right.
Yeah, this batch was still a little frozen. Like, yeah.
Right. Yeah, and you've got a spatula that's programmed to do it, and like all of a sudden, up now you've like flipped half the patties like in next to the fryer. Now they've touched a electrical connection somewhere. Everything's fine. But I'm like, I'm serious. Like I think
No,
people
this is
underestimate, and we dehumanize people. We dehumanize work that is like trivial, like that we think is trivial, like driving a taxi, like flipping a burger, like whatever. And it's not. Humans are a lot fucking smarter than we give them credit for.
Yeah, it was so funny. I remember going to in 2019. I did this like round the world tour of car factories, put on with a guy, and we just like, it was one of those magical Twitter things where people materialize out of Twitter to go on this tour of car factories because Elon was making cars in a tent and everyone wanted to know if that was normal. Anyway, we're in Toyota City and Toyota is showing off their like robotics lab or whatever. And they basically is where they take robots from vendors all around, all the robotics companies all around the world, and they buy 1 or 2 or 3 and they test them, and they're like, is this something that we can use? And like normally this is the part of the tour, like, right, if you're like in the US and you're like on a Ford factory tour or something like that, like this is the part where they're like, oh yeah, like this is the good part, right? Like this is the sexy where you see the cool technology or whatever. And at Toyota, they're like, yeah, this is where we like play with the robots, whatever. And people were like, what? They're like, yeah, that stuff's like pretty overhyped. I'm like, wait, what? Like Elon's talking about this, you know, fully automated factory, blah, blah, blah. And they put it really simply. They're like, yeah, like robots, absolutely, it's possible to attain all kinds of efficiency gains over humans for certain amounts of time, right? And the ultimately the question isn't, can the robot do something more efficient than a human? It almost always can, right? Like if you understand, though, you have to understand the task, right? So first of all, a human has to like essentially master the task, right? Get to the point where Kaizen, continuous improvement, can't go any further. But even then, right, even before that point, like, can the robot, the question isn't, can the robot improve on the human's efficiency? It's the question is, and by the way, this is the exact issue with self-driving cars. It's not can it, it's how long can it improve on human performance for before it also inevitably fails. Right. And then the question is, what is that failure mode? And then the other question is, what is solving that failure mode entail? And one of the things they said was like, look, so you have a car factory, right? And the way car factories are like a huge amount of capital that you put in one place. And as long as it's pumping out cars, it's fine. Everything's fine. The second you're not pumping out cars, you're fucked, right? Like you have to solve that shit. And this is variable depending on, right? Like this is super true with F-150 where it's like high volume, high margin, maybe like a little different with other factories. But generally speaking, it's high capital and you got to keep those things going. They're like, look, like even if a robot can improve 20% or whatever number you want to put out there on a human's performance, when that thing breaks, which will happen, then what? Because I'll tell you, if the answer is, well, you just stop your car factory for 12 hours, 18 hours, 24 hours, 36 hours, 48 hours to get the right person from somewhere else in the world to that factory who knows that robot and can fix it. If that's the answer, well, then go fuck yourself. I don't care. I don't care how much more efficient it is than a human. It doesn't matter.
Right.
And so what was amazing about this experience, again, like it was amazing in 2019. And I'm so mad that the auto industry has done such a bad job of standing up to Silicon Valley with this stuff, because then Toyota goes and they take us to a different part of this huge training center where they have this, right? And they're like, this is the cool part. And I was like, oh, this seems cool. And it was called Karakuri Kaizen. And so Kaizen is continuous improvement. And at some point when you're working on a line, your ability to improve the efficiency of your workflow just through how you're moving your body through the workflow is limited. There's only so much you can do. And what Karakuri Kaizen is, Karakuri is like in the Meiji era, there were like these like clockwork dolls that would like, I think they were like serving tea, and they would like you'd be at this like fancy tea place and they would like wind up this wooden robot and it would like walk the tea over to you and put it down, sort of a thing. So it means like wooden mechanical clockwork automation. But what it was it was workers, it was giving workers the tools to build unpowered automation that they designed and created and continuously improved on their workflow. And so it would be things like, you pick up the screw gun and they would be counterweighted, and like an arm would like swing over, and your nut or your bolt or whatever would be picked up by a magnet and swung around to you, and then you grab it and you screw it and you put the thing back, and then the system would reset. And this would be something that like the worker had made. It had no power. It was oftentimes made out of like wood, right? At this little workshop. And they're like, this is the cool stuff. And you're like, that makes sense. Because even if the efficiency improvement for the human worker is only 0.5%, 1%, 2%, 3%, tiny incremental gain, this is not something that brings the factory to a stop when it stops working. It's unpowered. So like the ability for it, right, it has to physically break to stop working. That's pretty easy to engineer around. But if it does break, the person who designed that automation is literally the person operating it.
Right.
And again, like, I'm not saying that this is like, if you go into a typical Toyota factory, that there's going to be you're going to see lots and lots of this. Like Toyota City is kind of a special place, and it's where the ideals of their philosophy are put into practice to serve as an example. But the theory there is like really important for people to understand.
Right. But I think you go to if you've gone to enough workplaces, like you can go like across industries, like you will see if you go to someone's, regular workstation and like a lot of times these like weird hacks at work like end up creating safety issues, and you have to be careful about that. People are pretty ingenious about like finding ways to make their workday more bearable, to reduce strain or to give them some sort of more satisfaction out of it, or do something more efficiently. Like people come up with like weird hacks, and again, a lot of times it can create very unsafe. But like you can encourage that too, because it's like, there's like an ownership of the space as well, and it's like it's well, because right, like right. This is the Doge problem. The Doge problem is, right, like the Doge bros understand LLMs. Bravo, by the way, like cool, good for you. But they don't understand what they're working with, right? Like if you want to automate anything, and this is where Silicon Valley fucks itself, is that they think that it's all about the technology, that the technology is the important part. It's not. It's understanding the process itself, right? And this is why Elon is pivoting from a general solution to self-driving to a general solution to automating anything with this Optimus thing, is because all he knows how to do is sell the idea of magical technology that solves all your problems, right? Whereas Waymo is not saying yet, although they're clearly being pushed in this direction in order to raise future funding rounds, that like, you're going to be able to have your car with your Waymo. It's going to take you everywhere you want to go, blah, blah, blah. What they're actually doing is they're automating the job of driving a taxi, which is really different than like a car. In certain domains.
Right. So a taxi doesn't have to ever leave San Francisco. It doesn't have to leave LA, right? So you train your model, you build your model for that place. And it's very, very complicated, but that complexity is bounded. And for that job, it works. For a car, that doesn't work because the car is not doing a job. A car is a general purpose solution for any mobility problem that you might have as an American, at least. And that isn't what's not. And so, here you have, after 8 years of selling that fantasy to people, which is, by the way, like hugely desirable. That's what people want to hear. That's what people want this technology to be. They're admitting by sort of building this fleet in Austin that like, no, actually that's not possible. If you want something that's actually driverless, that's actually automated, the only way to do it is to automate a task. There is no such thing as general automation. You can only, and then the automation for a task is only as good as you understand the task.
Except for when we get our humanoids, in that case, it'll work generally for everything.
Dude, those, I mean, it's almost too bad. And I'm sure I'm like really cursing myself here by even saying this. It's too bad that we're never really going to see Optimus. Like, we're not going to see them try to, like, at least I hope so.
We're not going to get the Cybertruck launch with Optimus.
Yeah, exactly. Can you imagine like the content the content, like when if like the problem is that, right, like they have to deal with this self-driving thing, this robotaxi thing in the next year. Like Elon said, this is also, by the way, another big end game tell, is that he's not saying feature complete. He's not saying, but he's saying this time next year, robotaxis are going to be like a significant, they're going to be enough of a contributor to Tesla's business that you're not going to worry about the 20% loss of car sales every quarter. Yeah. It's fucked. It's a big step for him to say that, though. And it's not going to happen. Right. Which is why we're not going to get to the kind of Optimus launch. But I mean, again, I've been wrong before, but like the content, if they delivered half-baked Optimuses,
oh my God,
the content would be incredible.
Oh, it's so funny. Oh my God, I can't even. Yeah.
The dream scenario here is that Tesla goes bankrupt well before then, and that like they would get to work on like a screenplay for a movie of like what would have happened.
I mean, the thing is, like, I don't know if it's quite as funny though, because I don't know if people like the reason the Cybertruck is so satisfying is because people have to drive it out in public, and so it's just like you're just like, whereas like I don't know, your robot would just like if it sucked, it would just like break in the house. I feel like I don't know if it's quite as public, but it would be very funny still.
I've had this comment up for a second. We should try and maybe address it as long-term haters. What would you say, Eric? Like, how do you? This is a hard question because I feel like everybody who kind of believes in Elon or Tesla or whatever kind of does so for their own reasons. I think that's part of my answer is like, you got to kind of understand what their angle is. If it's the rockets, there's a certain answer. If it's the cars, there's a certain answer. I'm kind of curious. Do you even bother trying to convince people like in real life that you just sort of encounter anymore?
Well, I used to, but like now it's like, I don't know. It's so different now because, well, first of all, did you see that Axios 100 most visible companies survey?
Yeah. That was
so keep in mind that a United Healthcare executive was executed in New York, and people
on the street.
Generally, people are like, "Oh, that's based," and that's including on like liberal and conservatives across the board. And this is across all American consumers.
Honestly, that survey should have had Luigi Mangione as the baseline. Like, I would anyway. Sorry. Continue.
Right? Yeah, but it's like, but I mean, it's like the whole company. It's like, is the company more trustworthy? Is it growing better? Is whatever, like across the board better? And so you think about that in terms of like, you know, where Musk is right now. It's so fucking easy now. Like my wife, like now, like. Before he used to be like, oh, like, yeah, he like if it came up and it was like in the right company, she'd be like, oh yeah, he like, you know, he wrote this stuff, like especially about like Texas or whatever. He's like, but now it's just like, oh yeah, like you know, because it just like comes up and like, yeah, like my husband is like wasn't shut up about him since like forever, and like, and so now it's like and so anyway, like long story short, like it's at this point, like I think for my thing is like people that still like Musk, like personally, like I just like it's like. Either you're just like it's just not worth it with those people, especially now, because I think there's some people have been like malleable or whatever. But what I think what I spend my time pushing back on, and I think I've had pretty good success at this, when people say, oh, but he did this, oh, but he's like a really smart guy, and not even excusing him, but they're like, and a lot of people that like really hate him, they're like, oh, he's gonna find some way to like steal all our data, and it's like, yeah. I mean, like, yeah, they're gonna try to, but it's not like you're giving like, and the people that act like he stole the election or whatever, it's like, no, stop giving him, like, he's kind of dumb. And I like, that's my big thing is I'm like, I stick to the stuff. It's like, no, the danger is that he has so much power and influence without like understanding it. It's not because he's like this smart guy or whatever. And so I've had much better luck, like no, like all these things that have happened that you see happening now, like with Musk haters, all this stuff was predictable, and I can say, hey, look, I've been pointing this out forever, and that I've had better luck with that. But yeah, convincing someone who likes Musk now is like, for me, it's like a lost cause, because like that's like 20% of Americans that like Musk, and I don't really care about those people, to tell you the truth. So
no, I do think there are some people now who sort of like have this sort of ambient level, right? Like I think a lot of people just sort of look around and try and take in the cues, you know, the vibes, and sort of be like, well, okay, I'm gonna like, right. And I think there are some people who just like aren't particularly online, don't follow the news, and like they're still sort of right. It's sort of the not the Japanese soldiers stuck on the island still fighting the war, because they were never really fighting the war. It was more just sort of, they haven't caught up with the sort of vibe shift yet. In which case, you know, and again, I think for both of us, like, we're in pretty unique circumstances, because both of us can kind of say, like, we've been hating in this guy for a really long time, like since before you ever started really even, right? And both of us know so much that we can, any hapless person who gets into it with either of us, like,
God have mercy on their souls.
Yeah, we can, like, what do you want to talk about? Like, which, you know, I certainly sort of have reached that point. And it's funny because, like, I don't know, like, as big a hater as I am too, like, just the other day, like, a friend of my partner's sister, sort of, you know, friends of friends. I mean, we're friends with them, hang out with them. Like, we're not super tight, but I consider them friends. And they own a Tesla, and like, I like the guy was like, you know, was a super fanboy, is now like sort of chagrined, but like has sort of adopted this sort of, I don't know, kind of ironic posture towards it or whatever. At the end of the day, like, you know, even if you're a big hater, like, you can't fight every single battle, right? And I think after 10 years of this shit, like, that's one of the big things, is like, I think one of the positive things to come out of this for me is like, there's so much shit. Like, Elon has flooded the field so much for so long. And I know this is like a Trump term, and it's, by comparison, and maybe it doesn't seem like as much, but if you've been following Musk closely for the last 10 years, so much has happened, and there's so much bullshit, like, and there's so many examples that any one of which should like sway anyone, that at some point you really have to, I think one of the good things is that it forces you to decide sort of like what matters and what doesn't, and what battles are worth fighting and what doesn't. And like, you know, for me, certainly, like, you know, as much as I'm working on my second book now, and both of them have just been like awful experiences. Like, writing a book is just the absolute worst, but like, it's necessary too, because a lot of what Musk is doing, like a lot of what he's getting away with, exists because we're stuck in the social media period where it's like everything is new every day, and people aren't building this stuff over time, and you need a book to really put together like the sweep of things and to understand, you know, how things have happened. And so I think picking your battles it's a hard lesson. It's a lesson I'm always, I feel like, learning new things about, but like, if you're going to be a hater for as long as I've been, like, you have to at some point kind of pick some battles.
You know, you're gonna miss him when he's gone. It's gonna be like that picture of Wolverine with the picture. You're gonna be like, I can't.
Honestly,
you're gonna have to find a new hater.
It's scary to think about.
I'm telling you, don't sleep on Sam Altman. Dollar store Musk may mature to the full.
I would love to pivot. I would love to.
I don't know. I think the one thing that's like genuinely impressive with Musk is like,
we got a hater in the chat. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, but what's their username? Let me see if I know their history.
Travis Tennies. I'm guessing you're the one who's dragging in the haters. Like, the haters have forgotten about me.
Hey, Travis, what's your username on Twitter?
Yeah, what's your Blue Sky at?
No, it's not Blue Sky.
No,
what's
not
your
Blue Sky
handle?
Travis appears to have quite the white beard going.
What's Travis, your handle? I want to know. I bet I've got like a photograph.
Hey, Travis, you want a link to the stream? We'll have you on here. Debate me, bro. No. Come on. Come on the show.
No, none of these people. They call me a keyboard warrior, but
oh yeah.
No, yeah, like it's just like, it's so funny because it used to be like, there used to be this like sense of like, oh, you got to be like cautious with it, and like now, like how the tables have turned.
The tables have turned. I mean, I would have written Ludacris so differently if I realized where I was going to end up. And I was so careful with that fucking book. And now people read it and they're like, this is supposed to be the hater's book. And I'm like, you don't know what being a hater in 2019 was like.
Yeah.
You just can't, there's no way to explain it to you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I mean, it was weird because like for me, like I mean, I know your experience is different because you were like, well, I don't know. I guess like I got mainstream hate like starting in like 2021. Where like
I feel like you've had more hate more recently. I feel like I kind of went through it really intensely, like 2016 to 2019,
yeah.
and then when Elon never mentioned my book, everyone I think got the cue like, oh, just don't talk about it.
Right. But I think the little squabbles back in like 2016 to like they got like nasty. Like they got like
Yeah,
nasty and
they
like
did.
between like
I have some
individual
screen
posters.
grabs of some people saying some real nasty stuff back in
Yeah.
the old online
Like,
Tesla wars.
like part of me kind of misses that because then it's like it's like I don't know. I mean, like besides
Listen
like
to
the actual
us.
doxing or whatever, but like I don't know. And it's
I
like
mean, those. So I will say this too. Like I do, one of the interesting things about being a hater for a while is like now it's all this sort of like blue sky. Everyone's on the same page. Everyone's an Elon hater, whether you're like a leftist or not, which most or leftist or liberal or whatever. Right? Like people went to blue sky because they didn't want to be in Elon's Skinner box, right? Like they didn't want to be subject themselves to that. And so there's this like intrinsic anti-Elon bias to blue sky, which is like, it's like awesome. And actually one of the things I've been waiting on is for the raid. Like I thought by now Elon would have sent, or someone would have sent, someone of full Mars block would have like come over, or like, gotten some people together and done like a raid on blue sky and like tried to, they haven't even tried. And that's honestly, I mean, this is like the reason I'm addicted to blue sky is because like on Twitter, it was just constant warfare always with with the Musk stands. And like here, it's just blissful. It's like paradise. There's just there's just none of them. They just can't survive.
Yeah, they can't survive, but they're still like, I don't know. Like it's like
do they show up for you?
Oh yeah, no, there's like a few of them that are like still really mad because like I don't know. I think they're really mad and they've run out of things to do because Kerbal Space Program 2.
Yeah, I think it's you've invoked the SpaceX. The SpaceX stands are the ones that still have a little. Although even though have you looked at the SpaceX subreddit recently? It's not even that was like the holdout. That was like the last old.
Oh yeah, no, like the Ars
church.
Technica comment section was also like a holdout, and like they
has that flipped.
Oh yeah, no, like overnight. But like no, but the thing is like they'll still never admit I was right, and it's like, well, I don't know what to tell you. So it gets, you can only do so much, but also like I mean
I've been getting more of the you don't know who I am, but you used to piss me off, but you know what, you were right thing. And I gotta say, I never get tired of hearing that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I hear it a few times now and then, but it's like, I mean, it's like, it's hard for people to admit when they were wrong. It's hard for me. I mean, like I've had to eat, in multiple scenarios, and it's hard to do. And so you say like, well, what, like, you try to give people in general some grace, and like genuinely a lot of these people are very young and they're a little bit naive and they've got like, and I think, and so you say, okay, well, we give these people grace or whatever. There's a lot of like really space fandom in general is like had a lot of like Nazis in it for a while. And so like, and then a lot of them are like middle-aged men, and they just like, they're like mad, not even like, not because it's just like, I don't know what, but we go through and say, hey, someone doesn't have to say like, oh, you were right. It's like, okay, well, maybe the next time someone comes around, you don't fall for the next scam or whatever. So
yeah. So this is an interesting comment that he's had. I don't know what exactly our friend Cishet Billionaire was soured on. I think one of the interesting things for me has been realizing how much when Elon Musk talks about like his whole brand is sort of like being the boy adventurer, and his whole thing is sort of like, the exciting future and exploring and pushing the boundaries and going out and like sort of a neo-modernist. It comes across. For a long time I thought of it as neo-modernism, and something hit me when I was sort of like putting together all the stuff about his like South African background, and like I there was this 60 Minutes interview where he talked about his maternal grandfather, Jared Haldeman or whatever, not Joshua Haldeman, May Musk's father, who was like this Canadian guy, and he was like, you know, Nazi sympathizer. The Canadian government was like monitoring because he was such a Nazi sympathizer during World War II. World War II ends, and like apartheid starts, and he moves the family to South Africa and tells the newspaper, like literally, like, you know, oh, all those people who are saying that apartheid is going to keep people away are full of shit because I came here because of apartheid. Like, and in 60 Minutes, and like this is the narrative in the Ashley Vance book, and this is like the narrative Elon Musk talks about. He's like, he was an amateur archaeologist, and he had this little airplane, and he just loved adventure. And like this is where, and like I remember like the whatever Scott, someone, whoever was on 60 Minutes was like, oh, so you, Elon Musk, you just take after, you know, your grandfather. You're just another adventurer. And like this kind of clicked to me. This was part of this sort of, there were a couple pieces of it, of realizing that like what I think kind of what Elon Musk has done with space, I think it explains both his popularity, and I think maybe, and I'm speculating about cishet billionaire. I apologize if I'm not. I don't mean to characterize how you think about it. I'm speculating about how people may think about this. Elon has managed to, right? Like I think the success of his sort of I'm an adventurer, I'm a boundary pusher thing was a rebranding of sort of the colonial impulse, right? Like of the, we're going to go into the unknown, and whatever's there, we're going to sort of conquer and tame it, and we're going to create opportunities for ourselves, you know, and in a way that is framed as some sort of broader social progress or cultural progress or whatever it is. I think this is, anyway.
I'm gonna push back on you in that I think that that's always been in American space. So if you go back and watch if you go back and watch Reagan when the Challenger crashed, he goes back to, he cites specifically, it's a beautiful speech. I mean,
the touch the face, let slip the surly bonds of earth and touch the face of God. Is that the what you're talking about?
Yes, yeah, and he references.
Say what you want about Reagan.
Well, he had very good speech writers too, and he could deliver them well. But he referenced, you know, Sir Francis Drake. So I was like, no, we did colonialism before, we're doing it again. So my whole thing, and I think this is actually my biggest defense of Musk, and I've done of actual like what he's done in that sector, is that like, and I've pointed this out a few times too, is like I went to a university and I graduated in 2006. That is a very good aerospace program, and I know a bunch of people that are in aerospace, and that was a bad time to be in aerospace, unless, I mean, there were certain satellite systems and like killing people machines, but like going into making airplanes wasn't good. Going into space, like you were like they're phase out, right? You phased out the shuttle, and it was a very sad time for that type of thing. And so what Musk did, and I think this is the real key of success of SpaceX, was giving people a mission that they believe in. I think Musk genuinely did this, right? You take that sense of adventure and you could say, oh, it's because it's like his impatience or it's rooted in colonialism or whatever. Like the people that wanted to make fucking rockets that were not just things to kill people, they were given money and resources and time. And we need to have a product that's going to be making, you know, 10%, you know, ROIC by whatever. Like they said, make a rocket, and people, I think that is, if you were early on, or if you had been ex-NASA and seen like all these great, you know, space programs like fall apart, and you were brought, I can understand those people genuinely loving Musk because he did bring an excitement there that is like real and was able to raise money. Yeah, well, he did lies, whatever. Right. That is real. I think the same thing applies to an extent with Tesla too.
And this goes back to what I was saying before about how SpaceX was not initially a business, right? It wasn't. It came out of his passion. And I think that like for him, probably how I think he maybe sort of part of the journey he's been on with this was, you know, SpaceX is this like genuine passion. He thought at that time $100 million. Like, how could anyone have more money than that? Like, how could that ever run out, right? And so SpaceX and you start a rocket company, a car company, and actually it turns out $100 million doesn't get you that far. But both of those companies, they came out of genuine passion, and they hit the VC ecosystem, the Silicon Valley VC ecosystem at the moment of the iPhone, where all of a sudden it proved that like the right hardware play creates this platform. and it is investable for a Silicon Valley VC that has only ever contemplated investing in software before, right? And he got lucky, but in his mind, I think, right, it was like it was this genuine experience of passion, and like the venture capitalists responded to his passion and his enthusiasm as they funded it because they shared it, and it was this like organic thing. And I think this taps into his issues with woke, is that I think like woke at a high level, you know, forced him maybe or revealed, right? And again, like this discourse or this conversation we're having, me suggesting that colonialism, right? Like I think his background as someone from a very colonial place was embedded in what was just genuine innocent passion, and that it was him being forced to confront that, okay, what you were genuinely passionate and innocently passionate about as a kid, as an adult, is part of a tradition, a historic tradition that you can understand and start to look at and say, maybe this wasn't all unalloyed good that it seemed as a child, because I was only sort of seeing a very specific sort of view of it. And like that creates a lot of, I think, like cognitive dissonance, internal turmoil about like this innocent passion that has also led to me becoming very wealthy and powerful, may actually have been, and for me, like it felt like the success was driven by the positive altruistic nature of it, that maybe in fact like a core motivating part of that was actually this sort of ugly colonial tradition. Oh my God, like can't have anything to do with woke. Like that may be one of the things that's going on here. And again, I realize I'm like speculating a lot about his psychology.
Right. Well, and I think there's like, I mean, it's also like, I mean, some of it, like you have to be like, oh, well, is it like a person that is, right? Like I think you had said, like, seeking being loved is like, does he want like a mommy, right? Does he want like, when you're talking about May, and like she exists to just, I think she sees Musk as like a thing she created, and yeah. I think if Mae Musk had hugged and kissed her child when he was younger, we'd have a lot less problems. That's what I believe. As like a parent of kids. Like I really think that.
100%. No, I mean like Musk's problem fundamentally in a lot of ways is that he demands unconditional adulation. He has this like endless need for unconditional love. Love is not enough. Support is not enough. Compassion is not enough. It has to be like this unconditional adulation. I'm not enough of like, I can't say exactly where that comes from. I would say his mom certainly is now playing the role of someone who is trying to model the unconditional love that her son clearly needs, right? That's the role she plays. She goes on TV and she's like, people shouldn't talk about him as if he's the richest man alive. They should talk about him as if he's an altruistic genius. And it's like, well, ma'am, like
I don't think she like, but you see her and it's like there's something like his dad is like such a weird monster, but there's something like much more human about his dad than there is about her. I think she's like I really do not.
Yeah, I think his dad is a more complicated human being than she is. She was raised by Nazis and it shows.
Yeah,
I'll just say that.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think I'd pointed out before, like I think like, I mean, like the only person that I think probably like genuinely cares about Elon's like feelings and well-being, I kind of feel bad for him. I think his brother is probably like, I think they were both raised in trauma together.
Kimball is like, I think the only Musk that I feel like under the right, I feel like under the right circumstances, I could like stumble onto Kimball at Burning Man and sit down with him and have like a real like. I would 100%. I don't think that's true of Elon or like any of his other enablers, but Kimball, I think that might be possible.
No, I would probably have a beer with Kimball, no problem. But yeah, I think like yeah, I think
do some shrooms with Kimball.
Yeah.
I want to point out here this popular science issues. I mean, clear, right? Like, I think this is like a well-established piece of Musk's identity is that he's the kid who read too much sci-fi. I think it's also clear he didn't understand a lot of it. And I think that one of the levels on which he didn't understand it, and I think where I feel like I have maybe some empathy or can have some empathy for him. Growing up as a child in South Africa, children are really perceptive about things that like grown-ups don't like you sort of take for granted. Like you exist in the world for long enough and you just take features of it for granted because they've just been there for so long. And children notice stuff that kids don't. And I can imagine science fiction being an escape for someone like Elon Musk who grew up in apartheid South Africa, because Black people don't even right. Like there's nothing but white people and aliens, and it's literally not on this planet, and so you don't have to reference any of the social or economic or other kinds of like difficulty or issues or anything about the power structure that exists on this planet. You are free to imagine future realities and alien planets that are just completely unmoored from any reference point to what's happening. And I think this is why he was able to become, for him, like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was an escape. It was this absurd world that he could escape into when, and this is why he doesn't understand it, is because in fact, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is very much about a lot of things that were happening on this Earth to do with the power structures that exist on Earth. But that wasn't what it was about for him.
Yeah. By the way, you've seen the movie District 9, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that actually subverts that whole thing. Like,
yes, yeah.
Must watch film.
Oh, he must fucking hate that movie. Oh, someone needs to ask him about District 9.
Yeah,
I need to watch that movie again. Okay, well, we've been at this for 2 hours. You're on the East Coast. It's getting late. I said we wouldn't make it go this long. But you were late, and so I had to punish you.
I was late. You did have to punish me. So
no, this was so much fun as always.
As always, we end up talking about things that happened in the past more than they're happening in the present. But
that's true.
But time is a circle, and it repeats itself. So all the things that we discussed in the past, they will happen again.
And my specific hope for circular time is that Blue Sky creates a Twitter Spaces clone, so we could just do this there, because
ad hoc.
Ultimately this is just an extension, for me at least, of Blue Sky, which
it's posting without wearing your fingers out.
Exactly.
Very important.
That's right. Okay. Yeah. Well, thanks, Eric, for hanging out. Always fun to chat. Sleep well, and we'll see you online.
Well, my friend. All right. Thanks, everyone.